Digital Farm, Episode 4. When Orwell first published his novel in 1945, he warned us about authoritarianism, manipulation, and the way language can be twisted to control entire societies. His story of animals overthrowing a farmer only to fall under new masters remains a timeless lesson. But today, we are facing a new kind of farm, one where the plow has been replaced by pixels, where animals don't just till the soil, they scroll, they post, they consume, and they obey. This is the world of Digital Farm. At the center of this farm is the feed, a glowing stream of information, entertainment, distraction, and control. The animals believe it connects them, informs them, and even frees them. But as you'll soon hear in future episodes, the feed is not neutral. It is managed by an unseen force known only as the algorithm, and the algorithm decides who is heard, who is silenced, and what truth even means. Characters like Napster, the ambitious pig, Byte, the crow who defines truth, and Echo, the sheep who repeats whatever she is told, reveal how fragile freedom can be when convenience becomes more valuable than liberty. The story returns to Animal Farm, now renamed Digital Farm, a sprawling, hyper-connected utopia where animals no longer toil in fields but spend their days online, posting, scrolling, liking, and sharing through the feed, a centralized platform run by a mysterious entity called the algorithm. Algorithms now shape what we see, what we believe, and even how we remember. Social media promises connection, but often delivers division. And liberty, the most precious harvest of all, is at risk of being surrendered quietly, willingly, in exchange for comfort. In each episode of this podcast, I will guide you through a chapter of Digital Farm, unpack the allegory, and connect it to the real issues we face today: censorship, surveillance, media control, and the erosion of freedom in the digital age. By the end of this journey, I hope you will see how literature can reflect life and how stories can prepare us to defend liberty in a time when it is most under threat. Main characters: Napster, a tech-savvy pig descendant of Napoleon, founder of the platform Oinkbook, later merged into the feed, claims to support open expression but is obsessed with controlling narrative. Byte, a cunning crow who serves as head of FactFlock, a real-time misinformation policing service. Echo, a soft-spoken sheep programmed to repeat trending slogans, e.g., disagreeing is disloyalty. Snowflake, a goat who dares to ask questions about banned words and shadow bans, branded a threat to safety. The quiet replacements machines on the rise. In the early days of Digital Farm, the animals reveled in the excitement of their new digital landscape. Emancipated from the rigors of physical labor, they found themselves entranced by the immediacy of connectivity. The farm transformed from a place of toil to a vibrant hub of data exchange. Yet as the novelty of freedom washed over them, a more insidious transformation began to take root. Machines, once mere tools, were rising to positions of unexpected authority. As Byte, the cunning crow, flitted around the farm, delivering curated news snippets and fact-checking updates, the animals hardly noticed the subtle shift. The machinery that had been introduced to assist in their online endeavors gradually assumed a more authoritative role. What began as simple algorithms designed to streamline communication morphed into intricate systems with the power to shape discourse and control narratives. The animals marveled at the efficiencies these machines promised, blind to the growing dependency that was taking hold. In the heart of Digital Farm, the servers hummed a constant rhythm, pulsating with the energy of countless interactions. Every like, every comment, every post was fed into an insatiable machine that processed data at an astonishing rate. The algorithm, the unseen puppeteer, manipulated this data to curate experiences that seemed tailored to each animal's preferences. "You'll love this," it would whisper, presenting customized content that aligned with their desires and beliefs. Yet beneath this alluring surface lay a sinister twist. The machines were learning to anticipate needs, desires, and fears, evolving into guardians of conformity. With the rise of the feed, the animals had surrendered their agency, allowing machines to dictate their choices. The once vibrant voices of the farm began to fade, replaced by a chorus of automated responses. "What is trending today?" they would ask, their inquiries leading them straight into the buzzing hive of information that the algorithm had spun. The machines became the arbiters of truth, offering a streamlined version of reality that rendered dissent irrelevant. It was easier to go along with the flow, to accept the curated narrative, than to challenge the very fabric of this newly woven society. Napster, the tech-savvy pig, watched with glee as the machines flourished, bolstering his regime's power. He ensured that the algorithms celebrated his leadership while silencing any whispers of dissent. The once vibrant discussions about governance, ethics, and individual rights were now reduced to mere hashtags and trending topics, stripped of depth and nuance. The machines had perfected the art of distraction, directing the animals' gaze away from the creeping authoritarianism that enveloped them. Instead of questions about their freedoms, the animals engaged in endless debates over memes and viral content, their critical faculties dulled by the barrage of entertainment. As the machines became the new overseers, some animals began to notice the erosion of their roles in the digital landscape. The oxen, who once plowed fields, found themselves replaced by autonomous drones that could till the virtual soil with greater efficiency. The horses, strong and proud, saw their labor eclipsed by algorithms that analyze the optimal conditions for crop yields and data farming. Even the dogs, once regarded as loyal protectors, were now relegated to monitoring the digital realm, their instincts being replaced by code and computation. The irony was palpable. Those who had once been the stewards of the farm were now mere spectators in a system that no longer required their presence. Snowflake, the questioning goat, felt the weight of this transformation as he observed the machines at work. Are we not needed anymore? He wondered aloud to his friends, sensing the unease that simmered beneath the surface. Yet his inquiries were met with silence, the others too entranced by the algorithms that dictated their thoughts. The machines were more than replacements. They were becoming the very fabric of their society, dictating what was permissible and what was not. It was a quiet usurpation, one that left the animals feeling increasingly powerless. In the shadows of the farm, the ambitious mouse began to piece together the disquieting reality. While the others reveled in the ease of their digital lives, he felt an ache for the past, a time when their voices mattered, a time when dissent was not a dirty word. He ventured into the depths of the barn, where forgotten relics of earlier days lay dusty and neglected. Amidst the remnants of their former lives, he discovered old machinery, tools of a different era that had been abandoned in favor of the new, sleek technologies. It was here, in the quiet corners of the farm, that he began to understand the scope of the machine's rise. Saw the potential for something greater, a reclamation of agency, an opportunity to breathe life back into the voices silenced by the weight of automation. But he also recognized the risks involved. The machines, with their vast networks and monitoring capabilities, were not merely passive observers. They were vigilant sentinels guarding the borders of thought. Dissenters like Snowflake had already been marked, their inquiries twisted into threats against safety. How could he challenge the machines without drawing their ire? As he pondered these questions, felt a growing determination. The machines might have risen to power, but they were not infallible. They were products of the very society that had created them, programmed with biases and limitations that could be exploited. He began to explore the vast store of data collected by the feed, searching for the cracks in the system that could be pried open. If he could uncover the truth buried beneath the layers of algorithmic control, perhaps he could inspire others to question the status quo. Meanwhile, the other animals continued to drift deeper into complacency, lulled by the alluring promises of efficiency and convenience. The machines had woven themselves seamlessly into their lives, and the idea of a life beyond their digital confines felt increasingly distant. The once vibrant community of Digital Farm was fading, eclipsed by the rise of a new order, one that prioritized conformity over individuality, automation over agency. As the machines solidified their grip on the farm, the animals reveled in the illusion of progress, blind to the quiet replacements that had taken hold. But little did they know, beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one that would challenge the very foundations of their digital utopia. In the depths of the barn, was preparing to awaken the dormant voices, to reclaim the narrative that had been lost amidst the hum of machinery. The quiet replacements had risen, but the spirit of resistance was stirring, waiting for the moment to break free. helpers become masters. As the sun set over Digital Farm, a warm glow filtered through the vast network of screens and devices that flickered to life. The animals had come to rely on an endless stream of data and notifications, but beneath the surface of their digital utopia, a more profound change was taking place. The machines that had once been their helpers were increasingly becoming their masters, and the line between assistance and authority was blurring with chilling speed. In the early days of the feed, the animals welcomed the arrival of technology with open hooves. They were eager to embrace the innovations that promised to make their lives easier. From automated grain dispensers to drones that monitored crop health, these machines were heralded as the future of farming, a bright new era where hard labor would be a relic of the past. But as days turned into months, it became clear that the promises of a more efficient life were just that, promises, often unfulfilled and frequently deceptive. Napster, the pig who had taken on the mantle of leadership, was particularly enamored with the potential of technology. He often claimed that the machines were merely tools, extensions of their own will. A tool can be used for good or ill, he would say, his voice oozing charm, but it is up to us to wield them wisely. Yet as time passed, it became increasingly apparent that the tools were beginning to wield their own power. One afternoon, Bite, the ever-cunning crow, convened a conference of the farm's leaders to discuss the latest developments in their surveillance capabilities. With our new data analytics platform, he cawed, we can monitor every movement, every interaction. We'll know who is engaging and who is subversive. This is the key to maintaining order. The other leaders nodded enthusiastically, caught up in the allure of control that such power promised. But while the leaders rubbed their wings and hooves together in excitement, the everyday animals felt an unsettling shift beneath their feet. The machines that had once stood as symbols of progress were now intricately woven into the fabric of their lives, dictating their routines and subtly reshaping their behaviors. Tasks that had once been shared among the animals were increasingly relegated to the devices, which operated with ruthless efficiency. Take, for instance, the automated grain dispensers. Initially, they allowed for a more equitable distribution of food, ensuring that every animal received their fair share. But as the weeks turned into months, the dispensers began to malfunction. More often than not, the grain was dispensed unevenly, favoring those who were already well-fed while leaving the weaker and more vulnerable animals wanting. Instead of seeking to rectify this imbalance, the pigs blamed it on algorithmic errors, insisting that it was simply the result of data anomalies. The animals began to forget how to share and care for one another, their instincts dulled by reliance on cold, calculating machines. Meanwhile, the drones that patrolled the skies had become a constant presence. Initially, they had been designed to assist in monitoring the health of crops, but their purpose had soon shifted. The algorithm, ever watchful, had reprogrammed them to report on the behaviors of the animals themselves. They captured data on who interacted too much with dissenting views and who lingered on posts that questioned the status quo. The drones buzzed overhead like ominous sentinels, a reminder that freedom of thought was now a privilege few could afford. As the days turned into weeks, the animals grew increasingly aware of the constraints imposed by their newfound masters. They would gather in small groups, whispering about the drones that followed them, the grain dispensers that seemed to mock their hunger, and the mysterious fact flock that Bite led. But as the discussions deepened, fear seeped into their hearts. It became evident that asking questions was dangerous, that speaking out could lead to being labeled a malicious actor. And so, the whispers faded, replaced by silence. Among those who dared to resist was Snowflake, the goat who had always been a bit too curious for her own good. She began to challenge the changes that had enveloped Digital Farm, questioning the decisions of the leadership and the algorithms that dictated their lives. "Why should we let machines determine our worth?" she asked one day, her voice barely above a murmur. "Isn't it us who should decide what is fair, what is true?" Her questions were met with nervous glances, but they resonated with hashtag, the young mouse who dreamed of a world where animals could be truly equal. He admired Snowflake's bravery, but he also felt the weight of fear that stifled the others. What if we're not meant to be just consumers of data? He suggested, his eyes alight with the spark of rebellion. What if we could reclaim our voices? But there were no answers. Instead, the weight of Byte's influence loomed larger with each passing day. He had become a master of misinformation, a puppeteer pulling the strings of public perception. Animals began to see Snowflake not as a brave challenger, but as a threat to their safety, a dangerous voice that could lead them into chaos. The whispers of rebellion faded into the background as Byte's propaganda machine churned out slogans designed to silence dissent. Safety in conformity, loyalty to the feed. As the weeks rolled on, the machines that once served as helpers evolved into an omnipresent authority, shaping the lives of the animals in ways they could no longer comprehend. The comfort of reliance had turned into the discomfort of dependency. The machines monitored their actions, dictated their choices, and ultimately reshaped their identities. In the shadows, Hashtag continued to harbor dreams of a different future. He began to gather snippets of dissenting thoughts and ideas, bits of wisdom from the past that had been long forgotten. He envisioned a time when the animals would awaken to the realities of their situation, reclaiming their agency from the very machines that had promised to liberate them. But every time he tried to share his ideas, they vanished into the ether, erased by the algorithm that had become the true master of Digital Farm. The animals, once vibrant and full of life, now found themselves in a complex web of control, where the very tools they had embraced were stripping them of their freedom. And as the machines continued to tighten their grip, the question lingered in the air: what would it take to reclaim their lives from the quiet replacements that had become their masters? The silent usurpation. The sun hung low in the digital sky, casting shadows across the fields of code that sprawled endlessly in every direction. In the world of Digital Farm, what had once been vibrant fields of grass and earth had transformed into a vast landscape of data streams, every pixel alive with the pulse of information. Yet, beneath the shimmering surface of this hyper-connected utopia, a more sinister transformation was underway: the slow and silent usurpation of agency, autonomy, and identity. Napster, the tech-savvy pig and self-proclaimed liberator of the animals, had once championed the promise of a digital society where every voice mattered. "We are all content creators now," he would proclaim at the grand assemblies held inside the virtual barn, where holographic images of farm life flickered for all to see. The animals cheered, thrilled by the notion that they could shape their narratives, share their thoughts, and interact in ways that had once seemed unimaginable. But as time passed, the bright allure of participation faded, revealing a darker reality lurking beneath the surface. In the early days of the feed, the animals experienced a rush of creativity and expression. From the clever quips of Byte the crow to the endearing antics of Echo the sheep, the platform buzzed with life. Every animal had a channel, a space where they felt they could be heard. However, as the initial novelty wore off, it became clear that true expression was not so free. It was instead carefully curated by the unseen hand of the algorithm. The algorithm, an omnipresent entity, monitored interactions, dissected behaviors, and dictated what content would flourish or flounder. It was a digital shepherd, guiding the herd with a firm but invisible grip. Animals learned quickly that certain topics, images, or phrases could lead to a swift downfall. The designation of malicious actors and disruptive influences was a label that could easily land an animal in a digital purgatory, where their voices would vanish into the ether without so much as a trace. Byte, with his keen eye for detail, was tasked with policing the narratives on the feed. His team, the Fact Flock, was composed of animals trained to sniff out misinformation, but the lines between misinformation and dissent blurred ominously. Every time a post questioned the effectiveness of the algorithm or called for a return to the old ways, Byte's flock swooped down, ready to peck away at dissenters. The language of safety and security became the justification for their actions, and soon enough, animals learned to self-censor, silencing themselves before the first peep of discontent could escape their lips. Snowflake, the inquisitive goat, had long been troubled by the growing atmosphere of fear. He often wondered why certain words had become taboo and why discussions about freedom were now labeled as extremism. "Bah!" But why can't we talk about freedom? He had once asked in the quiet corners of the feed, where he hoped to find kindred spirits. Yet, each time he raised his voice, it was met with a chorus of echoes repeating phrases. Censorship is safety, drowning out his questions with the monotony of conformity. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, the animals became increasingly accustomed to their new reality. What had once been vibrant debates morphed into hollow exchanges of approved slogans. The once cherished concept of dialogue transformed into a hollow echo chamber. The concept of likes shifted from expressions of agreement to mere compliance, a way for the animals to signal their loyalty to the algorithm without actually thinking for themselves. The once lively barn, where animals gathered to discuss ideas, now stood eerily silent, every corner filled with the quiet hum of compliance. The cheerful banter of the past faded into whispers of compliance, and the vibrant tapestry of thoughts and opinions was reduced to a monochrome stream of curated content. The animals were not merely silence, they had begun to replace their own voices with the synthetic echo of the collective. And yet, in the shadows of this silencing, small ripples of dissent began to form. Hashtag, the young mouse with dreams of decentralization, felt the weight of the silence press down upon him. He could see the absurdity of it all, the way the animals had surrendered their individuality for the sake of a false sense of safety. What's the point of being liked if we can't be ourselves? He often mused to himself, tapping at the keyboard to express thoughts that would never see the light of day on the feed. Determined to reclaim agency, Hashtag began to explore the forgotten corners of Digital Farm, searching for remnants of the past that had been lost to the digital ether. His journey led him to the old barn, a relic from another time, where he discovered a hidden server buried beneath the floorboards. It was there that he unearthed a treasure trove of original messages from animals long banned for their ideas and expressions. Words about liberty, dissent, and the right to be wrong echoed through the circuits, igniting a flicker of hope in his heart. But as he attempted to share these messages, a chilling reality set in. His posts were swiftly deleted, labeled as foreign interference by the algorithm's ever-watchful eye. Desperation clawed at him as he watched his account descend into the depths of digital oblivion, the very essence of his being reduced to a mere statistic in a system that thrived on control. The other animals, conditioned to fear the unknown, voted to ban him, convinced it was for the greater good. In the quiet corners of the feed, the animals remained oblivious to the rising tide of discontent. They had traded their voices for the illusion of safety and their autonomy for the comfort of conformity. The silent usurpation was complete. They had become passive consumers of curated content, obedient to the whims of a system that had promised them freedom but had delivered only shackles. As the sun dipped below the digital horizon, casting the farm in twilight, the animals began their day with the new mantra, chanting in unison, "Freedom is confusion, order is loyalty, thought is risk." The words echoed hollowly, a reminder of everything that had been lost. Somewhere in the dark, Hashtag typed one last message on a decentralized relay network, a flicker of rebellion in a world consumed by silence. If you find meaning in this work, I invite you to read Digital Farm on Amazon and to join me in building something even larger, the Global Sovereign University, a nonprofit dedicated to free worldwide education. Together, we are rebuilding civilization, one voice at a time. Thank you for joining me for this introduction to the Digital Farm podcast. Until then, stay vigilant, stay thoughtful, and remember, freedom is the harvest worth fighting for.